Welcome to the Inspiration Contagion podcast, where we spread inspiration one story at a time. I am your host, Holly Jean Jackson. Each episode spotlights and interviews one transformational leader, their stories, and their advice for how you too can lead yourself and others through inspiration. If you are a visionary seeking to uplevel your leadership skills, then this is the podcast for you. I invite you today to spread inspiration like a contagion. Welcome to the Inspiration Contagion movement. Welcome to episode 32 of the Inspiration Contagion podcast. Today's episode is also being recorded on video, so if you'd prefer to watch our episode, make sure you check the show notes for the YouTube link. With that, please join me in welcoming today's guest, Anat Yoder. Anat Yoder is a CFP principal and wealth manager of Yoder Wealth Management. Anat is a business owner, a mother of two, an aspiring gymnast at the age of 41, and someone who is done playing with everybody else's rules. Welcome, Anat.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. That's quite an interesting background. I love the gymnastics at 41, the mother of two, and I love that you're done playing with everybody else's rules. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background?
Sure. So as you mentioned in the intro, I'm a business owner of a wealth management firm. I'm 41 and been married for 20 years. And we have two kids. So girl's 11 and our son is 8, and obviously live in the San Francisco Bay Area. But I actually started as a structural engineer, focusing on design and analysis of bridges, like the Bay Bridge, to withstand these huge California earthquakes before moving over to the financial world. But I think the defining detail about me is that I'm an immigrant, and having come from Israel at the age of 7, and all the qualities that come from being a naturalized citizen and seeing your parents struggle in a new land, just to provide a good life for me and my brother. And we're just grateful to have that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, I wanted to ask you, what makes you such an inspirational leader, or what's your secret sauce?
I think I would just start out by saying that I think when most people think of a traditional leader, they think of someone who they have like a 400-person head count or a CEO of a Fortune 30 firm, but it's just that's not the kind of leader that in life that we've chosen, and I've chosen for myself. So I think that our leadership comes from guiding our clients to lead their best lives, to be a role model for other professionals and community and our kids. And it's funny, I went and looked this up prior to this, and it turns out that of the financial advisor community, 16% of them are female. And it gets better than that. Of all the financial advisors, those who actually own or run their own firm, the percentage of females is, if you want to guess, less than 1%.
That's what I was going to guess. That's crazy.
And so when you find yourself on that side of the statistic, you're whether you like it or not, you're a leader in the field. And whether that's inspirational or not, maybe I'll leave that up to others to decide.
I think that's really inspirational. And, I'm curious, why do you think that there are so few women in the financial advising fields? That's wild.
Yeah, I think there's people a lot smarter than me who could probably answer that. I think I could just tell you from my observation that you have to take risk to be a business owner and to make it in the financial world. And I've seen the guys be willing to take that risk, and unfortunately, not the women. And I think that I have seen women who could run incredible firms and do an amazing job, but whether within the couple or whatever it might be, but they've chosen to take the role, and we'll talk about this today, but they've chosen to take the role of making less so that they can be there for the family. And I just feel like, why can't you do both? Why are we having to choose between one or the other?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I actually work with a lot of moms to show them how they can have both.
Yeah.
Are there any, just quick pointers for those women that are kind of on that edge and they're considering right now, hey, I do want it all. What was helpful for you for taking that risk and taking the jump?
I think it's it's something that for me, and it's kind of like how we've defined the success for ourselves, and an inspiration that I feel like we are there for others in a way. It's about living in alignment. So there's a book called The Power of Story, and I read it when I was pregnant with my first kid. I will definitely say it changed how we are, how I am, how we live. And so the concept is this: the story you tell yourself, the story you tell others about yourself, the story you tell yourself about the life you lead and want to lead, versus life you actually live. And are those actually in alignment? And for us to be able to grow our business while having enough time for our family, marriage, and for myself, whether it's quiet time or doing activities that bring me energy, I think if you're doing this while working 60, 70 hours, while somebody else is at home running the household, that's cheating. But I think you could grow your business incredibly while having time for everybody else. And it's just by not listening to everyone else and not playing by their rules.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really key and critical concept for people to grasp. So I just want to narrow in on that.
Sure.
Society tells us that we can't have it all.
Yep.
And so many women believe that they can't have it all. And I noticed that men don't have this belief set as much
Nope.
as women.
Nope.
And so it's so important that we as women and just people define success for ourselves. And if that means having a family, but also that you have this bigger passion, you need to go for that. And it starts with, like you said, the story you're telling yourself. Some people call this mindset. Some people call this inner chatter. Whatever you call it, getting that story aligned and not listening to what other people are saying is hard, but it's so
very hard.
necessary. Yeah. So did you find that as you were going on that journey and keeping things aligned and kind of going against the grain, so to speak, were there people that you had to break up with in your life?
I had to break up with a career. So I mentioned I was an immigrant. My mom's an engineer, and she was a pioneer. She was an engineer in the 60s before it was even cool for women to be engineers. In so many ways, she's a role model for me. But when my parents came to the United States, it's really for me and my brother to have an even better life. And one of the things they always wanted, and I don't think it was the reason I chose it, because I was always attracted to engineering and analysis and solving problems. They felt like me being an engineer was the best thing to do. And I became an engineer. I got my master's in it. I got the professional engineering license. And then I decided to leave it. And I kind of felt like I was disappointing them at some point. I'm not sure they even, maybe to this day, think highly of financial advisors, but it was the right thing for me. It was the right thing for what we needed to do.
Yeah, no, and I think it's really important to listen to that, because all of us, regardless of our relationship with our parents, we have this innate thing where we want to make our parents proud.
Yes.
And we want their approval. And
please everyone else around you, right? I mean, we're taught to do that. We're taught to don't speak up so loud, to make everyone else happy.
Yeah. But if we want to be happy, we actually have to sit quietly with what we as an individual want and what our passions and our skills are. And that's really hard to do when you have people around you that you're trying to please, or you're letting their belief system become your belief system, or their story become your story.
Yes.
So it's a really important point, is that you were at least aware that, this was something that might disappoint them, but you still did it. You move forward. Yeah. So I also wanted to ask you, what does inspiration mean to you?
I think it's similar to how we define the success. It really is about, I know it might sound like a broken record, but about choosing to live your life the way you think it should be, and to not be led by other people's constraints. And so, and for us, and one of, at least one of my goals professionally, is if I can help others unlock their potential. And it sounds maybe odd to say as a financial advisor, but if we can put people in a place that they're comfortable and truly understand what makes them tick, what gets them up in the morning, then we're allowing them to feel inspired enough to unlock their potential.
I don't think it sounds crazy at all. I think it makes a lot of sense. Like, money and the financial
Yeah.
foundation for life is it's the foundation so that we
Yeah.
can build those dreams, that life, that business,
Hmm.
and educating and helping your clients
Yeah.
set that foundation and then get more clear on what money opens up in their life and living that in a way that is aligned, that's going to bring them happiness. Because there's so many stories about money out there where people that have a lot of money, they're selfish or unhappy. And there's
Miserable.
also yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, and that's not true. Like, there are so many amazing people that have a lot of money and they use their finances to make a bigger impact,
Hmm.
and they're giving back. And I think that's wonderful. So do you find that you're also kind of advising your clients on how to be good stewards of their finances?
100%. Actually, I would say it's rarely about the money. It's really what
Exactly.
they want. Yeah, it's what they want to achieve because of it. Or if they have the security, then they have the opportunity now to be charitable, whether it's through their time, through their energy, or their finances. But I mean, it's all about the hierarchy of the pyramid hierarchy, and how comfortable you feel in your own self. If you feel good where you're at, then you're in a position to be able to help others.
Yeah, and I love that you said that it's oftentimes not about the money. I've interviewed so many people that are incredibly successful, and when we talk about success and happiness and how they define that, it's never about the
Never,
money.
never.
It never, like, if you really ask somebody, and let's say they have a financial goal, which it's great to have financial
Mhm.
goals, that's
Of
healthy.
course.
But it's always about what's behind that financial goal. Like, what is that money or that goal going to do for you? What does that open
Mhm.
up for you? And that's
Right.
really at
Mhm.
the heart of the why behind the financial
Why?
goal.
Right. We have our lights going off here. There we
Oh,
go.
I was like, are you having an epiphany? I was like, we have an idea. So with that, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the challenges or obstacles that you've faced along this success journey?
Uh, I, it's a good question. I think first I would want to address the parts of my life I feel fortunate to have had. And I was born into a loving family. I met my soulmate, my best friend, my husband at the age of 17. And we have two healthy children. And to get to live in the United States in the Bay Area, I mean, not a day goes by that I'm just not grateful for all those things. And it helps to have that stability as a foundation to build off of. Life doesn't go by without its challenges as well. I think the greatest obstacle that we have are what believe that we believe what the leaders in our field or who we believe those leaders are, what they say. When we look to make major changes, we sought out the advice of others, and our ideas were just dismissed as impossible, or, well, no one else does that, so what makes you think you can do that? Or why don't you just stop trying to reinvent the wheel and do what already works? But that just didn't allow us to live in our alignment. And I think it's the challenges of the the 4 inches of real estate between my ears. It either becomes your greatest advocate or also the greatest enemy of your progress. And you just can't make any progress or have any success if you follow everybody else's path. We just have to do it differently. And that's really hard. I mean, it's so much harder than they tell you. And but when you're in alignment, there is just no other path. And actively growing your business, as we were talking earlier, doing it wasn't working 60 hours a week and not seeing your family. In some ways, that's easier if you just have one focus. And the reality is, most of my competitors, they have somebody else at home renting the house.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you said that the real estate, the 4 inches of real estate between your
Mm-hmm.
ears can be your biggest challenge or your biggest, your ally.
Yeah.
And I agree. So how do you balance when you come up against, like, you're doing that research, you're asking for advice from the experts. And I mean, I'm assuming you're kind of going into this like, oh, they're going to be helpful. There could be a
Yeah.
collaboration. They could help me ideate. And then it's the opposite experience. So
Yeah.
how do you work through that?
I think it's finding the right mentor. I found one that told me something differently than everybody else did. And it's the one that actually aligned with what we thought. It didn't seem possible. Nobody else we knew was doing it. But they believed in us enough to give us the path to make it happen. So it really is getting rid of the toxic environment, whether it's a friend, whether it's a partner in your life, business partner or personal, but getting rid of that toxicity in your life with the cancer, and finding those who truly believe in you. And I think a lot of times when people tell you something can't be possible, it's because if you do it differently, then you're telling them everything they believe is wrong.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I completely agree. It's interesting. I feel like resistance shows up in our lives, either in our mental chatter, in our relationships, when we most need the mirror against what we're trying to shift and
Right.
transform. So when you have this new idea that you're trying to bring into existence that nobody else has done, you're really truly a pioneer. And so, of course, you're going to get resistance because it's uncomfortable. Those people
Right.
haven't considered this new idea, and it would be potentially competition for them. And so
Yes.
I completely agree. It's so important to find those mentors and people that are a few steps ahead of you that believe in you, and building that community around yourself of people that believe in your purpose
Mhm.
and what you're trying to achieve. Yeah. All right. That's great. So I also wanted to ask you, is there a story of inspiration that you are known for?
I would say this is not necessarily business related, but it's real life. So when I was growing up, I was always almost a year younger than everyone else in my grade, and I was tiny. Definitely not what you would call an athlete. So somehow I still put it in gymnastics, and I struggled to do 80 of the tricks that any of the other kids could do so much easier and faster. For some reason, I like the conditioning. So fast forward, somewhere around my mid 30s, while I was taking my kids to their gymnastics classes, I saw a class available for adults, and I was hooked. And something just clicked in my brain and my muscles, and I could finally do all the things I dreamt of. And I can tell you, when you're standing on the pathway to the vault, there's absolutely nothing sane about running at full speed towards an immovable object only to propel your body over it, hoping you land and don't crash and break every bone in your body. But at age 41 now, I can do flips and tricks and things I could never do as a kid. And I can assure you that every neuron in my brain is screaming at me about all the reasons that I shouldn't attempt it, all the reasons I should quit, all the reasons I would fail. And but the greatest pride I feel like comes from accomplishing it anyway, or at least trying to. I mean, what's that one phrase? Courage is not the absence of fear, but the mastery over it. And that mentality, it has translated into business. And so there's nothing that cracks me up more when someone now says, "Oh, you're an athlete." And I think, really? Because in my mental space, I've always told myself I wasn't.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I know a lot of people in there. It's so funny. These days I run across so many people that are just barely 30 and they're like, "Oh, I'm so old." I'm like, "Oh my God, are you kidding me? You are not old." I know people in their 70s that could, outrun some of these individuals in their
Mm-hmm.
30s. And like, it's a mentality thing. So it really
It
is
is.
what your thought process is and what your story is around that. But I wanted to come back to the comment that you made around that mastery of fear.
Mm-hmm.
So with the vault and in business,
Yeah.
what are some of the tools you use when that fear comes up? Because fear is healthy, but
Mm-hmm.
mastering it is not easy for a lot of people. So do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, I feel like if you truly believe in it comes back to the why. If you know you're doing it for the right reason, then you can't stop yourself from doing it. I mean, it's really just as simple as that. If you truly believe in why you're trying to accomplish something, why it's important to you, then what could possibly stop you from doing it?
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
agree.
it's really,
Those lights are funny.
all right, here we go. We can do this. We're good.
We've got this. I completely agree. Some of the craziest ideas that I have had were the ones that just felt so aligned and heart centered
Hmm.
and in the core, just
Hmm.
intuitively. I knew even this podcast, when I did a meditation around the book that I wanted to write and finally landed on the right topic and the right perspective to write it from. And I realized I wanted to not just share my story, but interview other transformational leaders
Hmm.
like yourself around inspiration and be remaining resilient. And I have to say, I interviewed those people that have done the podcast, and a lot of them were just such naysayers, like, oh, it's really hard. If there's any other way you can do this, you should
Hmm.
do that. And I
Hmm.
could have listened to that. Like, they were basically trying to instill fear and that I would not be successful into my storyline. And I was
Hmm.
like, okay, well, I'm not going after the same goals. My markers of success for this are very different than yours. And so I just went for it because it felt really aligned. And I have to say that everything is just organically and naturally fallen into place because I took that step and I took that risk. Would you say that with the choices you make that are more risky but aligned, that you've had the same experience?
Yeah, and I think it comes back to the pride that goes with it. It's like if someone does something for you, you don't nearly have the same level. You don't build that confidence and that pride that goes with it. So when when you take those a journey of 1,000 steps, right? But 10 steps into it, you look back and go, "Hey, those are really 10 hard steps, but look how far I've made." So each time I mean, really going back to that secret sauce you talked about earlier, it's just putting one foot in front of the other, regardless of the situation. Just keep moving.
Yeah, I love that. No, that makes me think of Dory, the movie. Just keep
Oh,
swimming
right.
because I like
It's
swimming.
true. It's so true.
So just keep swimming or just keep taking that step
Just keep
forward. It really
walking.
is that
Yeah.
simple. Yeah, that's great. So you identified as a heart-centered leader at the core of the five leadership styles that I interview across. So I wanted to ask you, what does heart-centered leadership mean to you?
Um, I think that most traditional leaders and how most people look at them is they lead to an outcome or lead to a measurable, and better ones are principle based. And you look at the Stephen R. Covey 7 Habits types, um, but the best ones I have found are values based. So when you truly know what's important to those you lead. So once you figured out what you're about and your why, do you know those who you lead? Do you know their why they're on this earth, what makes them want to get up in the morning, and then become an advocate for them and their values? So empowering someone to achieve what's most important to them in life, right? Yeah, that's the magic sauce. That's the stuff that gets me up in the morning.
That's really special. Secret sauce or magic sauce. I love that. Yeah, and I think that people that are the most transformational, powerful leaders, they know their values. They know how they define success. They know themselves. And then, like you just said, if you really want to take it to the next level, it's not just understanding your ideal client and knowing each of your clients, but really helping your clients get to the
Mm.
heart of what their value is and what their why is. And that is not an easy skill for many people to learn. So, how did you begin to learn that? And how do you bring that out in your clients?
For us, we when we first meet someone, we go through about an hour and a half to 2 hours where we just ask them about them, everything, from how they were raised to their parents to their deepest fears, how they actually feel about their children, their religion. Are they still that religion that they were raised? Um, and when you go through all those questions at the end of it, these are questions sometimes that no one's ever asked them. They haven't ever even asked that of themselves. Even if it's a couple that haven't heard each other uh, vocalize. And so at the end of that, you truly get to understand them and what they're about and why. And then you start going into the finances. But again, it's not about the finances. So I really feel like it's just having the true desire to listen to them and hear what they're about, and to know what's important to them.
Yeah, well, and I imagine that it's really important, especially with finances, because people are just so
Mm-hmm.
sensitive about their finances.
Mm-hmm.
that you really need to build that level of trust with them.
Right.
So how do you make it a comfortable space, since a lot of those questions could, you know, be difficult for people to answer?
I've always thought every time I walk into that first meeting with somebody new and I think, I'm going to ask that first question and they're going to say, who are you asking me these? Because at the end of it, you know them better than their family, even than their children. Um, so sometimes by the end of it, their spouse. I have never had anyone not, as I call it, open kimono. Because it is a safe space. I feel like if they know you truly want to know for the right reasons, why not? That's why we're there together to work together.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine that that's because you are bringing that value and yourself and your heart
Mm-hmm.
to the room so they can sense that
Right.
intrinsically. And if it was somebody with the wrong intentions, people
Right.
can sense that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I imagine this is a very different approach than the standard financial advisor. Is that correct?
I've this is funny because we might get to this, but I think somewhere around my 20s, I just started kind of putting my head down and just started running, and I just assumed everyone else on this, path of running of life had a shortcut, or they're able to run faster, and kind of somewhere around my mid 30s, I just kind of stopped and I looked around and I wondered where everybody else was, because if nothing else, we were running on the same path together. It turns out what we're doing is different. Who knew? I don't know if it's better, but it's different. And so I don't think it's necessarily similar to others, but that's okay. Everybody needs somebody different. And we're not for everybody either. Not everybody wants to share their deepest, darkest everything with somebody they just met. But hopefully they know, those who work with us, that we'll go to the end of the world and back for them.
Yeah, well, I imagine that it allows you to put together a better financial
Mm-hmm.
plan when you actually know the client deeply. You understand their risk, you understand the full picture,
Right.
and I think it's really important to take that time. And I imagine a lot of other financial advisors, at least I've worked with financial advisors that have never asked me any of those questions. So.
That's too bad.
All right. Well, so I also wanted to ask you, at what age did you start believing in yourself?
Oh gosh, I'm a late bloomer. Still think I'm not sure I'm even still there. I wish I was. But I think there definitely was a turning point in my mid 30s. And I, I would say that adding physical challenges to my everyday life was a game changer. And just pushing to do things beyond my comfort level. So prior to my mid 30s, I don't think I ever ran more than 2 miles in a row, or at least on purpose. And I somehow find myself signing up for one of those trail running obstacle course races, and what they called the beast distance of 14 miles. Don't ask me how I ended up there, but I was so unprepared. And this is in Sacramento, in the rain, over dirt, and somewhere around mile 9. You're supposed to carry this bucket of rocks up and down this hill. And I couldn't even barely pick it up off the ground. It weighed as much as I did. But the rain's coming down and I'm dragging it along the ground. I just sat there. I was so defeated. I just found myself saying out loud, I said, I just can't do this. And it wasn't possible. And of course, the second it comes, the words come out of your mouth, it's like you find the strength in life where you find the strength you didn't know you had, and you draw upon that energy. And I'm here now, so I made it. And I feel like every time I'm at work or at home or in life, and I'm just faced with this impossible situation, whether consciously or subconsciously, you pull from those struggles. It's the ones that make you believe in yourself, because darn it, those rocks made it up the hill and down the hill somehow, some way, despite everything that was in my head telling me otherwise.
That is a really good point. I was just talking to somebody yesterday and she was sharing how life is about duality. You can't
Mm-hmm.
have joy without sorrow, and you can't have
Yes.
light without darkness. And I agree. It's really important to have the right perspective around difficult times in life and challenges and obstacles. And the perspective you just shared around how looking back at how you got through and faced those challenges and obstacles and found the strength or found the creative solution around it is the right way to frame those experiences. And they really do fuel you through that next, what feels like a wall or a mountain. That's amazing. Yeah. I'm so glad you made it.
Me too.
So also, since you do this, you shared how you help your clients uncover their why. How do you show your belief in others as a leader, whether it's with your clients or people you're working with?
I think it's similar to the heart-centered leadership. It's learning their values as opposed to just imposing yours, asking them the questions and actually letting them talk and hearing them. And I just feel like everyone else, so many people are just so quick to give advice without actually seeking to understand the problem. Or I would even say more importantly, the source and the catalyst for why the challenge is even being raised in the first place. So what are you really solving for and why are you solving it? So I think the belief in others as a leader just comes back to understanding them as opposed to taking what's happened in your life and posing it on them.
Yes, I would think, I think that today more than ever, that's such pertinent advice or wisdom. We'll put wisdom instead, right? Because people don't listen anymore. They literally, as soon as you say something, they're like, oh, do this. And it's like, did you even hear what I just said? It's so important to actively listen. And I feel like today more than ever, people just want to be seen, heard, and understood. And you can't hear people if you're not actively listening, and you can't understand them if you're not actively listening. So, next time you're talking to a client or somebody you care about, instead of starting to immediately try to problem solve or thinking about your advice or thinking about your perspective, when that comes up, stop, be present, and listen.
Yeah, and personally, that's really hard for me because to me, I'm a problem solver. Let's solve this problem. And if somebody comes to me just for the sake of talking things without necessarily wanting to have a problem solved, it's frustrating.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
I have to stop myself from just saying, okay, maybe they just need to talk it out, and that's okay too.
Yeah. In fact, since I've started coaching, because I'm also the same way, like I just want to solve problems. And when I started working with clients, I realized that my framework and my perspective is very different than my client's perspective. Like, so you said, knowing their values, knowing how they tick, knowing how they operate is so important. And so I had to learn how to dial that back. And so now what I'll do is I listen actively. I understand each of my clients really well. And then I'll ask them, are you looking for advice or ideas around this? Yes or no? And if they are, great, I'll share one or two, not all of them, because that's too overwhelming for them. And then we'll talk through that and then we'll see what feels best to them, because it's not important about what I think is right. It matters what lines up with their business or their idea. And so I think it's really important. The wisdom that I have that people should experiment with, because I'm not going to just give advice, is next time you have a friend or a client sharing a problem, ask permission first. If you have an idea, would you like me to share an idea? Would you like me to share some thoughts? And see if they say yes or no. I love it when people do that too, because for example, there's specific relationships in my life where I have to tell the person, I'm just here to vent and I don't want your advice. Yeah. So we can improve our masterful communications using things like that. Yeah.
I love that.
Is there a story that shows how you lead from the heart that you could share with our listeners today?
This, yes. And this one is hard to share. And I feel like the most impactful moments in your life are sometimes the toughest situations. So I'm actually rather a private person, but I do want to share with you the hardest thing we ever had to do professionally. So about 8 years ago, by all measures, I think we would have considered to have had a successful practice, but in reality, with one kid at home and one on the way, we constantly had to coordinate who was going to get our daughter before daycare closed, only to have just very little quality time at home before she went to bed, and just to repeat that again the next day. And there just had to be a better way. So this is something I alluded to earlier, but we went out, looked to the leaders in our field for advice, and the best of the best. And it was like visiting the ghost of Christmas future. And we did not like what we saw. The advice was to continue to grow, add more staff, add more advisors, more clients, just more. And the problem was, it just wasn't in alignment with the story we wanted to live for ourselves, for our clients, for our family. And we knew that our clients, they would not get the best under a junior advisor. And we knew that we would end up working more hours. So what's the point? Just to make more, just to do what everyone else is doing. And I mean, just to have our name in lights to satisfy our ego. And so we made a really tough decision, one that everyone else, with one notable exception, said that it was a recipe for failure, and that's something you're never supposed to do. So we ended up reducing the number of households we serve by about 2/3. And our clients, the people we love, those we promise to be by their sides, those who dare to be vulnerable with us, and we felt like we were breaking our promise. And we knew that if we continued on the path we were on, though, they wouldn't get the best from us. And we weren't willing to make that kind of sacrifice, that they couldn't get the best from us. And neither would our family or our marriage or my own self too. So we personally had, and this was over a several year time period, but 100 breakup calls. And I'll share that as a woman, as a mom, I felt like I was letting my gender down, because I was admitting defeat, that I couldn't do it all. And that this is why you don't hire someone like me, because she'll just go put her family first, right? And it turns out that was all in my head, because when we explained why we were making this move and the reason behind it and our values, we had their support, we had their blessing, and then realized we were leading by example, and we were living in our alignment. And it turned out that because we reduced the number of clients that we served, we ended up having more energy to grow our business for those we could serve the best. We worked less hours. And that's when I found that's around the time that I found the time to do things like those races and gymnastics, which gave us more energy and confidence to do other things. I mean, I can actually pick up the kids from school. We can play together. They don't have a drained mom at home. And we won't look back on these ages, because they're only young ones. We won't wish like that we would have had more time with them. So it goes back to the concept that I feel like everyone is happy to tell you why your idea won't work, why you shouldn't. I mean, you never let clients go. You just hire more people. But they're just happy to tell you the constraints. But it takes courage. It takes courage to think differently and act on it.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you sharing that, because it's so important to understand how you want to grow and why, and when you've hit that threshold, so that you can show up as the best version of yourself. Because
Love that.
yeah, I mean, for me too, I always want my clients to be over 100% happy. Like I want them to be elated, to have the best possible experience. And if they're ever unhappy, I want to rectify that immediately. And I agree, like not everybody has the same definition of success, where they want to have, a huge company with a big staff. And so it really is important, like you said, to understand your values and do that in the right way. And I agree, when you come from the heart, it's really hard to do anything wrong. I don't know how anybody could possibly disagree with you when you genuinely show up from your heart and you're like, this is why we're doing this. It's for our family. And I think more than ever right now, people are realizing how important family and community is.
Yeah, out of every tragedy or difficult things, positive comes out of it. So maybe out of this pandemic, some positives too.
Yeah, I'm really hoping and hopeful that people are getting more clarity around their values. People are getting new ideas for how we could do different things differently. I really hope people are starting to figure out how to be more compassionate in their community, because we certainly can use more compassion
Yes,
in the world.
agree. Totally agree.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share before we get into our lightning round of questions?
No, I think we've covered quite a bit today.
Yeah, it's been really wonderful. All right. So, what is your favorite book?
Oh gosh, easy. Harry Potter, work of art. Nothing better.
Well, and the woman behind it is also inspiring. So, yes, I
Yes,
love Harry Potter.
everything from A to Z, from J.K. Rowling to the actual series.
Awesome. I love it. What networking or community groups you love the most?
I love my girlfriends, my strong girlfriends who are willing to be vulnerable and real and truly listen and be there for each other.
Yeah, we all need that inner circle. What's the best one piece of advice you would share with others today?
Gosh, it feels a little cliche, but darn if it's not true. Just have the courage to be you.
Hmm.
There's so many times where people told me that you're too loud or you're too much of this, too much that, to feel sucker punched. But if you're just you, it's okay too, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, and don't let anybody tell you that you is not good enough. I love that. Yeah. If you could share one message with the world, what would that be?
Well, since we're recording this in the middle of a pandemic, I think I would say this too shall pass.
Yeah, this too shall pass. And what's the legacy you wish to leave behind?
Um, my initial answer would be that I'd love to gift the world with grounded, independent, resilient children. But I kind of hope it's even more than that. And we kind of talked about this earlier, but to help others unlock their potential, to unleash their passion on the world. And if we can empower them to do that, then that would be a worthy legacy.
I have a feeling that you're already doing that. So I'm excited for you and your husband as you guys stay aligned and continue to serve your clients. Awesome. This has been amazing. So, anybody who's interested in learning more about Anat, I will have her website link in the show notes. It's www.yoderwm.com. So, you can check that out in the show notes to learn more about Anat and her practice. With that, thank you so much, Anat. This has been such a wonderful interview.
All right. Thank you to you as well.
All right, to our listeners, I look forward to seeing you next week on Inspiration Contagion. Thank you for joining the show today. I hope you were inspired. More importantly, I hope you take action. What is one thing you can do in this moment that will inspire someone? Without action, nothing changes. Be the change you wish to see in the world. If this show truly inspired you, we ask that you share it through your network. Help us spread the light and inspiration in the world. I look forward to seeing you here next week.